You know, in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, scientists and policymakers didn't expect the violent resistance to public health guidelines, such as masking, social distancing, and lockdowns, all of which were designed to stop the spread of the virus. But there's one group that you can always count on to predict human experience and human behavior: the artists. Here in the United States, Gloria Estefan called for calm and embrace of the moment. In her song, "We Needed the Time." Listen.
Things rarely go as planned. All the dreams that we envisioned seem to crumble in our hands so suddenly alone. With my thoughts and my decisions, with the life that I have known that will forever be changed, and I pray it's for the better, taking what we are together to finally build a better world, as we needed time to catch up. The race we started put on pause, slow the wheels that fast were grinding, all the things that matter most. We needed time to let go of worthless things we value wrong, to rediscover new directions, new beginnings.
In a few short months, dozens of prominent artists released songs on the pandemic. Look Clubs released 6 Feet Apart, about everything we missed in the pandemic and the quarantine. Bon Jovi released a song, "Do What You Can," after volunteering in a local restaurant. And San Pedro released a song titled "Phone Sex." And you don't need me to explain that, right? Looking back, it's amazing that several artists anticipated the social fallout in those early days. But that's what artists do, right? They hold up a mirror and show us what we've missed about ourselves. You know, I began studying music in the context of epidemics in 2006 with the understanding that disease epidemics aren't just public health problems. They reveal the fault lines of our society. And the arts, most especially music, has the ability to reveal people's hopes, fears, and struggles as they navigate the social fallouts. It's odd, perhaps, to realize that an ethnomusicologist like me studies infectious disease. But that's an important part of the narrative. Medical scientists are trained to understand the nature of diseases and how to treat them. But medical knowledge can go so far when society lacks trust in public authorities and policymakers to the extent of resisting practical guidelines, such as masking and social distancing, and even propagating and spreading conspiracy theories about vaccines. If we study and document disease epidemics only through the perspective of medical science, we'll learn next to nothing about the social behaviors of people in times of epidemics. So let me share a few examples from my study, and you'll be surprised how familiar they seem. In 1713, smallpox spread to the region we now call South Africa. South Africa is made up of several native African ethnic groups and minority populations from Asia and Europe. It was the crew of the Dutch Indian Company that brought the disease to South Africa. But it was only a matter of time before Black South Africans were blamed for the spread of the virus. So the white minority government restricted the movement of black people across the country, resulting in social and economic pressure on the black population. That pressure suddenly led to the tendency to distinguish between urban and rural dwellers, old and young, men and women. That led to social disintegration and the loss of the sense of community, as you can hear in this Zulu song.
I feel pity when I see smallpox making its ravages and spoiling the face. Here at home in the village, we no longer live. We no longer are kind to each other, even among relatives. It is the fault of this terrible disease. This disease is truly terrible, my lord. It has driven the son-in-law from his home. He goes but returns with cruel words. The old woman comes this way. She is turned out. She goes away and dies in the bush.
The lyrics of that song suggest that women who were infected by smallpox were stigmatized and treated like outcasts. We saw this in 2020, when public figures casually blamed Asians for the spread of the coronavirus. They called it the China flu. And that led to a new wave of violent attack on Asian Americans. Another interesting thing about this song is that it speaks about smallpox not just as a disease, but as a malevolent person. It is the fault of this disease. It has driven the son-in-law from his home. In fact, smallpox exacerbated the distrust between the various groups of South Africa and between the people and the government, so much that there was massive resistance against the vaccine that had been developed by Edward Jenner in 1796. History repeats itself, right? Another great example of musical history is the 1918 influenza. Soldiers who had just fought in the First World War in Europe returned to South Africa and brought the disease with them. This was just 5 years after the South African government had passed a Land Law Act that reserved 70% of the land for the minority European population, while pushing the majority black population onto a tiny sliver of land. So you can imagine that black Africans' distrust of Europeans had reached a breaking point by the time the virus arrived in South Africa in 1918. And so, the song, Influenza 1918, composed by this Zulu person, Ruben Aluza, shows just that.
Gonyakaka 1918 Saketwa ukufa esikubi zangu kuti influenza katata majongozi kwatata na machichi kwatati zingoduso ezazetenji siwe kwatato makochana kanyena bakwenyama kwangati kukuni felimnyama pezu kwalom klaba siani alan sizwa siani alan tombi musanu kuvumelin klinzion kobaitweli.
Pay attention to the last two lines of that song. We warn you, men, we warn you, young women, do not follow your heart because of lust. This song is a warning to the South African urban black population. You have embraced the European and colonial lifestyles and abandoned your traditional values, and now God is punishing you. Repent, or your people will die. The song also shows how cultural politics can shape how people think about or respond to disease epidemics. Black South Africans could not trust the Europeans and the white government as honest interveners in the influenza epidemic. Traditional healers and preachers dissuaded people from participating in the government-sponsored inoculations. They warned that the influenza was a device of the Europeans to wipe out the native races of South Africa. And as that has not been very successful, they are now sending out men with poisons to complete the work of extermination. Poisons, referring to the vaccines, the flu vaccines. Sounds familiar? I tell you what, the idea about disease epidemics as agents of social upheaval is not a 21st, 20th, or 18th century problem. As a matter of fact, record from the Black Plague of the 14th century and the Bubonic Plague of Milan in the 16th century all show similar patterns of social disintegration. Parents abandon their children. Children abandon their old parents, leaving no one to care for them. Worse still, magistrates and civil authorities abandon their duty posts and flee to the countryside. Thieves and bandits robbed people and looted the abandoned homes. So, writers and poets adopted the plague as a metaphor for social disorder. Let us listen to an excerpt of this song, Stella Celi Extirpavit, a Marian hymn that had become popular in the 15th century in the midst of several plagues in Europe.
Stella Celi extirpavit, quae lactavit Dominum, mortis pestem quam plantavit, primus parens hominum. Ipsa stella nunc tinientur, sidera compescere, quorum bella pleben scendunt, dire mortis ulcere.
This song is a prayer to the Virgin Mary to intervene in the plague, which it says is tearing apart the people with a loathsome scare of death. Fast forward 400 years, and we hear a secular plea, this time not praying to Mary or to God, but to the doctors and nurses curing us from the coronavirus. Here is Adam Sandler's quarantine song.
Doctors took us into this world as babies. Doctors take good care of your grandma. Doctors always give you an old lollipop after hitting your knee with a hammer. Nurses slap your arm till they find a good vein. They wear Crocs and they tell you the truth. Nurses give you ice packs and pain medication while your doctor is smoking on the roof. Doctors and nurses will save us from this mess if we give them the supplies they need. And I hope they save us soon, 'cause I'm feeling really sick of my family.
That sounds funny, right? Over 400 years, and so little has changed. You know, what we are experiencing in the current COVID-19 pandemic is a tale as old as time. Disease epidemics aren't just medical problems. They are social problems too. They reveal the fault lines of our society. They can tear us apart. They can also bring us together. Perhaps lessons from musical history could have helped policymakers anticipate some of the challenges that we have witnessed during this current pandemic. But it's not too late. Disease epidemics remain part of human experience. And if we learn the lesson now, I believe future epidemics can be better managed. Thank you.